You know, with all this talk of war going on, I'm supremely frustrated that there are not just politicians, but pastors and others that are talking at fucking CPAC about how we need to make the government even more apocalyptic. So, for context, there's nothing wrong with being a Christian. That's fine. You can be a Christian, you can believe in the teachings of Jesus, or more accurately, the teachings of Paul. Like, you can do those. That's fine. I'm never going to say that you're evil or bad or wrong for doing so. However, there is a sect of Christianity which terrifies me. Absolutely fucking terrifies me. And those are the Dominionists, who are behind the Seven Mountains Mandate. Now, the Seven Mountains Mandate is an evangelical ideology that instructs Christians to gain control over the 7 key areas of societal influence, or otherwise known as the 7 mountains of society. These are family, religion, education, government, media, arts, entertainment, and business. If Christianity can get a foothold in all of these areas, or most of these areas, then Christianity as a religion, as a thing, can effectively govern those. If Christians, say, have authority over what makes a family, or how a family should be structured, and therefore get to ban polyamorous people from getting the marriages that their family structure needs, ban gay people from having marriages that their family structure needs, ban trans people from being able to be married by using the former in some weird, twisted, bigoted way, then absolutely they have control over the family. When it comes to religion, they want control over, well, what the dominant religion in the area is. This has been a baked-in thing with a lot of versions of Christianity for many years. Education. How many bills do we get all the time that try to argue that creationism needs to be taught in schools despite the fact that it has no actual scientific backing? What about the fact that PragerU, a supposedly Judeo-Christian organization, is now able to be in charge of certain areas of the education sector in Florida? It's wild to me. Of course, government, you get people who believe in the Seven Mountains Mandate to get involved in government, to actually manage to get positions in government. This is one of the reasons why I think you should go work with your local DSA in order to get those positions for ourselves, because politics is literally you and me arguing over who deserves to have power, and I think people who are going to use that power responsibly are way better than the people who want to bring about the fucking apocalypse. Of course, the Seven Mountains Mandate argues that we need to have control over media because media is where culture stems from. Culture always flows down from 2 things: the contemporary media of the time and the politics of the time. Whatever is considered available for people to say within the Overton window is gonna be something that dictates what culture is gonna do, and whatever people see on TV and movies is what people are gonna emulate. Just kind of what they've done for years. And then, of course, that's where we get to arts and entertainment. Christianity has had a pretty decent stranglehold over this for a decent while. Comic books, thanks to Christian organizing, managed to lose a lot of their a lot of the writers who would write comic books lost a lot of the rights for writing whatever they wanted and had to work under much heavier restrictions, due in part to Christian parent groups trying to use comic mandates to say what is and is not allowed. These same people then say censorship is bad, but you know. Anyway, then finally you get to business. If you can get business, the people who control lobbying, the people who control the oligarchical, shadowy back half of American politics, if you can get those people that money to flow through pastors that believe in the Seven Mountains Mandate, then more power flows from that. All of this to say, all this to give context for what happened this year at CPAC.
The truth of the matter is, it's the pulpits that back up from Christian nationalism that make the Christian patriot feel like they're awkward or extreme. That's where most of the damage is done.
So, Let's talk about patriotism versus nationalism. I've argued before that the main divide between these two is a patriot wants a country that is really good and thus can provide the best for its citizens. A nationalist wants the citizens to provide everything they can for the country. A nationalist will generally argue that the things the country does are good because they are the things their country is doing and they should be proud of that. A patriot usually looks at the things that their country is doing and wants their country to do better. A nationalist will take whatever status quo the country is currently doing and root for that, or root for more extremes. A patriot will look at what the country is doing and hope that it can and will do better. One is a toxic parent, and one is a parent that is trying to shape a child into something better. We, as citizens, collectively have stewardship over parenting what America is. That's why you vote. That's why you go protest. That's why you get involved in local politics. That's why you unseat people, so you can be a better parent to your fucking nation. So when some dipshit here says that, by the way, Christian nationalism was always the norm and it's only people stepping away that made it weird and bad, I want to take that guy and just kind of throw him into a goddamn lake and see if it can snap him out of that drunken stupor. Because I don't want more nationalists. I don't want more people who will blindly look at the things their country is doing and go, yes, sir, Mr. President, sir. I want a group of people that will look at what the country is doing and scrutinize it and try to make it better. I don't want a group of people that want me to give everything to my country. I want a group of people that want a country to do better by its citizens. Anyway.
And I pray to God this year that shifts and the momentum goes to the outspoken Christian who is a Christian nationalist. 30.
I don't just want moderate Christians. I want the nationalist. Okay, so do you know why I don't argue for moderation in politics? Do you know why I don't advocate specifically for, like, the milquetoast Dem? I advocate for the fucking socialist. I advocate for the other extreme, insofar as that's even an extreme. Like, socialism is just unions, but on steroids, and we already have unions, so it's not as extreme as you fucking think. But regardless, the reason that I advocate that way, the reason that I do that, is because the other side is advocating for extremists as well. They are not advocating for moderation. They are pointing at leftists. They are pointing at you and me, and they are saying that we should be moderates. And then people believe them when, if we were moderate and they get to be extreme, the Overton window will always shift further and further in their favor. And I guess I need to go ahead and throw out what that term is. The Overton window is the window of acceptable politics in your nation. If the Overton window favors more right-wing beliefs, like getting rid of unions and, well, having more government authority over people, then at that point, your Overton window is going to be such that it's harder for you to argue that the country shouldn't dictate whether you get to have an abortion, because people just accept that that's the norm. If your Overton window is further to the left, then there are more things like personal liberties and unions that you may actually advocate for, and more progressive politics. And if those are considered the norm, it's way easier to advocate for those on the pulpit. It's less like having a fucking rope that you're trying to pull of tug of war. If you've ever played fucking Mario Party, you know the game where everybody's doing tug of war and you've got a handful of little guys on one side and then one guy in the Bowser suit in the other? Your Overton window can pull one way or another, and the two ways that you can get it to pull is by having major influence forcing it one way, or collective smaller influence forcing it another way. We don't have major influence. People argue that, like, liberals have a lock on Hollywood, but that's only the case for as long as we can manage to keep the progressive norms of society as, you know, fucking normal. And even then, I don't think that Hollywood really is as liberal as people want to say. There's too much money in it. There's too much lobbying in favor of it. I think they just don't like that it's progressive. it's not necessarily fucking lefty. Anyway, that's me going on a bunch of tangents. The Overton window is the acceptable norms that you're able to talk about and advocate for. If I advocated for communism, that would be well outside the Overton window for America. We've thoroughly demonized it. But if I were to argue for like hardcore authoritarian nationalism, I'm going to be honest, that's not too many steps far out from what is already allowed on the right. The right wing already favors control over your individual body. The right wing already favors using US imperialism to attack other countries willy-nilly. The right is already okay with drafting people. They're already okay with taking away your individual rights. So the only question is, which ones will they take away? And if they do it because of some Christian nationalism bullshit, they get to do it because they think that you should believe in their God. And that becomes way harder to argue against because he can't exactly come into the building and tell us what he thinks, but a bunch of politicians still think that they can tell me that. I don't want our Overton window so far to the right that I can't advocate for basic ass shit like trans people having access to HRT, like gay people having access to marriage, like black people and women having access to voting. But, you know, the further right we go, the harder it's going to be to advocate for those things. And I've actually got a few videos I'm going to talk about as well, where some of those Christian nationalists are trying to get women out of the voting sphere. And make no mistake, once they're out of the voting sphere, they're just going to find the next group to oppress. It always happens that way.
80 million evangelical and pro-life Catholic Christians in America are the firewall between the destruction of this country.
Did you just say evangelical, pro-life Catholic? I feel like there's a little bit of confusion there because evangelical Christians, by and large, are Protestants. But okay, that may be my Christian upbringing splitting the hairs on this one.
And its survival. There's not enough mobilizing of the Christian community, the 30 to 35 million of us that are out there, to be a muscular catalytic force to reshape this nation. Either we have a great awakening or we will not make it into the future.
So this is interesting rhetoric for me, because this is something that, I mean, evangelicals specifically, but Protestants have been fighting for years. I want to say the last 60 years have been largely defined by a bunch of evangelical pastors claiming that they are doing a revival, claiming that they are having an awakening. And it happens so often that you have to ask the question, how many of you are actually the fuck asleep, or do you just keep using words you don't know at all? Because the revival, the idea of the revival is to have a mass amount of people who otherwise wouldn't have been going to church, wouldn't have been following the teachings of Christ, actually flooding in to the church, flooding in to the Christian flock. But we constantly hear, maybe I'm not accurate in this, maybe I am wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we hear this kind of rhetoric about there needs to be a revival every fucking year. It's a lot like the Jesus is coming. He's the king of edging at that point. Anyway.
There has to be a fusion of the political and the spiritual. Yes. And we can no longer be embarrassed or inarticulate in taking that position.
So this is a position that I hear a lot, and it confuses me because I personally don't think that having religion influence our politics a lot would be a great idea. I think that shouldn't be the case, because what if, quote, the wrong religion takes over? I know that fucking Steven Anderson from the NIFB has argued that he doesn't care if Sharia law takes over the United States so long as he gets to shoot gay people, but I feel like most Christians would not want to be under Islam as a theocracy. They would not want to be under like the incredibly nationalist, the Hindu nationalists. I don't think they'd want to be under that regime either. And yet, they argue that we should be under a religious regime, ignoring all of the ways that human rights get violated by every religiously authoritarian regime in the world. They want us to have that as well, because they think that their religion is the right one for it. But I have information for you. Iran also thinks their religion is the right one to be the theocracy. That's their thing. They believe that they have the right because of their religion as well. Instead of trying to use all of those failed tools that we know all the weaknesses to, maybe we should insulate ourselves from that. Maybe that would be a better idea. Hey, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Maybe even consider check out my Patreon. I do talk about everything that's going on over on Patreon in my real life as a vlog series, so if you want access to the behind-the-scenes stuff, that's where you get that. I try to update it 4 times a month so that you can know everything that is coming up in the following week and everything that has been going on the back end. That all said, if you haven't subscribed already, maybe we're 16 minutes into the video, maybe click the button. Also, I have multiple other channels. I have the Suris MTG channel where I talk about magic if you want to take a break from politics, and I have Neko Suris Live where I have more of an eclectic bit of content to throw at people. That said, let's go ahead and get back to the weird guy that really wants us to have authoritarianism.
Because this is the hope for the future of America. The president has made a declaration that we should all, I can't believe we aren't talking about it, May 17th, on the 250th anniversary of the First Continental Congress, calling for prayer to dedicate America to God. My prayer, my call to action is that we will see at least 250 great awakening preachers that are not ashamed of the gospel and able to defend our political ideology raised up on the 16th that will meet together, and on the 17th stand behind the president dedicating this country.
Listening to this rhetoric, again, it's basically Christians saying that they want to take control of everything. And, like, while technically we have had awakenings in the 1700s, awakenings in the 1800s, that's where the businessman's revival was. If you go to 1971... that's basically where you get a fuck ton of these supposed Christian revivals. The African revivals, the Barrio revival, and a ton of the movements that happened on school campuses trying to preach to colleges. All of those things, all those are revivals. All those are great awakenings. It keeps fucking happening. They're never going to be satisfied. They're never going to be fully awake. They're always going to keep arguing that they need to have more and more awakenings, and they're going to operate the same way with power. But no, not only do these guys want those awakenings, I think they're going to operate the exact way when it comes to power. There's never going to be enough power for these people. There's never going to be a point where they say, we have what we need. They're going to keep trying to get more and more power until they can push the United States further into an apocalypse. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. The whole reason that the Seven Mountains Mandate exists is to try to bring the United States closer and closer and closer to an apocalypse, because they think that if we can make sure that Israel and the Middle East are in a giant conflict, that is one of the prerequisites for us to have the rapture happen and the tribulation happen, and thus God coming down. The idea that God would do that on his own time is anathema to them. They think that they have agency there, which is really weird, because again, I figured that would be the thing that they would all agree on, is that God would do that whenever he wanted in general. Jesus. Asina says they want awakenings, but they hate the woke. Yup. If you want to know more, please look up the Seven Mountains Mandate and look at all of their stuff that they believe, and check out the Christian sects that are trying to bring us further to the apocalypse, to get us closer to the tribulation. It is a wild set of beliefs. Owen Morgan, used to be Telltale, actually has a lot of videos on this as well, if you want to get into the specifics. That said, that's what I'm looking at right now. But what's the answer to this? Well, the answer is really simple. Get involved politically, and not just go
The truth of the matter is...
Nope, stop. No more autoplay. The person who made autoplay, die in a fire. The way that we solve this is really, really simple, but its simplicity is probably one of the worst aspects of it. It's getting people en masse to not only go out and vote, but to also go out and try to write laws themselves, to go out and try to do everything they can to get people that they want elected. That means canvassing for them. That means showing up to meetings when they need things. That means talking to their friends and neighbors about who they're going to be voting for. There's so much that goes on there, but it's all really simple. It all just boils down to get politically involved. Also, Red Eyes Europa I don't know who that was. I didn't see anything they said. What happened there? Did I miss something? Sakura? But regardless, it's that simplicity that screws us up, because it seems so nightmarishly simple, and then everybody goes, oh, well, I can do that tomorrow, or I don't need to do that right now. Like, no. If you want to talk about politics, if you want to get people to do things to make their country better, the time to start worrying about that is now, not some hypothetical tomorrow that you get to push further and further ahead all the time. I'm sorry. This is one of the reasons why I talk about politics on my channel. I used to be just an atheist channel. I used to talk about that and philosophy, but every single time I tried to talk about just atheism, it turns out that one of these chucklefucks who wants religion to take over the entire world, one of these guys ended up coming up saying shit like this, like, oh, we need the people who believe in Jesus taking over the entire US government. Oh, okay. I guess I don't just get to talk about the philosophy of it. That's not a thing I get to do. I have to actually get into the nitty-gritty and the politics and the people who are getting elected and shit. Like, I don't get a choice in that. And I think this is one of the reasons why so many atheist content creators over the years have moved into talking about politics. Holy Kool-Aid talks about politics now a lot. Genetically Modified Skeptic talks about politics a lot. Prophet of Zod now has a secondary channel called Mr. Zod where he talks about politics. Vice Rhino started an entire streaming channel to talk about politics. I moved into politics, and I'm just talking about the creators that all started around the same time that I did, or the people that inspired me to do what I do. And that's a small number of people. That's been the case basically across the medium. Whether people move to the right or to the left, talking about philosophy and atheism, it ultimately brings you to politics, because chucklefucks like this think that a god that they can't actually listen to should be the ultimate authority over everything on our lives in this world. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.